only sane one. If you want to go to the book of John, we're going to go to chapter 20. We're going to pick up after they've told him, and look what happens here in verse 24. One of the 12 disciples, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, was not with the others when Jesus came. They told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he replied, "I won't believe it unless I see the nail wounds in his hands, put my fingers in them, and place my hand into the wound in his side." Now just stop there for a minute. Here he is, one of the 12. 3 years of walking with Jesus. He has seen miracle after miracle. He's heard teaching after teaching. He's heard the promise and the prediction that I'm going to die and I'm going to rise. He has had 10 of his best friends, and Mary and the ladies, tell him, "Believe us, he's alive." He hasn't believed. He hasn't accepted. He has wrestled with what they're saying, what he's experienced, and what he has not experienced. So he puts a caveat. I want to believe, but the only way I'm going to believe if I see and if I touch. That's it. See, but one thing I like about this is it's okay to voice your doubts out loud. Speak your doubts out loud. Don't hold them inside. Let your doubts out. It's better to doubt out loud than to remain silent. How many people remain silent with their doubts? Year after year, church season after church season. Oh, we come, we hear, but we still have doubts. We still have questions. But I don't dare tell anybody I got questions. Because I might be the only one in the room who has a question. That would look foolish. See, but Thomas doesn't do that. He flat out tells everybody, "I don't quite believe you. I'm going to let you know why. And I'm going to put, I need proof." Many of us are wanting proof. Many of us that have these silent questions that we won't speak, we want proof, don't we? Somebody show me something. Show me the resurrection. Show me this power you're talking about of a changed life. Because I've heard the story and I've heard the story, but I've still got my doubts. So many of us want to know this. So a whole week goes by. Thomas has his doubts. He's hanging out with the team. Look what happens next. 8 days later, it says, in verse 26. 8 days later, the disciples were together again, and this time Thomas was with them. The doors were locked, but suddenly, as before, Jesus was standing among them. "Peace be with you." Yeah, that would freak you out, wouldn't it? You need a lot of peace at that moment. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and look at my hands. Put your hand into the wound in my side. Don't be faithless any longer. Believe." "My Lord and my God," Thomas exclaimed. And Jesus told him, "You believe because you have seen me. Blessed are those who believe without seeing me." Imagine this encounter for a second as you have publicly doubted. You have publicly made statements. You have hesitated. And I love this because Jesus doesn't go smack him upside the head like we would do. "You unbeliever, didn't you know anything for the last 3 years? Didn't you learn?" No, Jesus says, "You know what? Come. Get intimate with me. Touch. Experience. I'm here for you, Thomas. I'm not here to beat you up. I'm not here to condemn you with your questions. I'm here to let you experience the truth. I'm alive. I lived the perfect life. I died the sacrificial death. And I rose like I told you I would. Come. Here I am." For those of us that have the questions, for those of us who are afraid, embrace that moment. Live in that moment. Realize you are allowed to come. And Jesus is not going to condemn you. He's not going to stop you, and neither are we. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your thoughts. See, the reason Jesus is doing all this is really powerful, because I often wonder if God has the power to raise a man from the dead, if God has the power to do everything he said he does, why didn't Jesus raise from the grave completely whole, completely complete, perfect, spotless, no wounds, no nothing? Can God not do that? Is God limited by some ability not to erase the wound marks? See, but the wounds prove the resurrection. You have to have the wounds. You have to have the scars. They prove that he is who he says he was. He's not a copy. He's not some guy posing as Jesus. He's the guy that hung on the cross on Friday night. He's the guy you buried. The wounds prove the resurrection. Now ask yourself, why do we hide our wounds? If we live on the other side of the grave, if we live as believers, as Jesus followers, and we say we experience the power of the resurrection, why do we hide our wounds? Jesus didn't. So I thought today, instead of just talking about it theoretically, I would ask someone to come up and share their wounds with us. Amy Frank here, you guys would recognize her. She sings up with the band. Her husband plays in the band. Amy and I got together this past week, and we went to one of our favorite places, and we had caribou coffee. And we just sat around. We just got talking about wounds, and about her wounds and her life experience. And wounds are not fun. I openly admit that. Wounds are messy. They're uncomfortable. The scars, we don't like to look at them. So I just said, come up and have a cup of coffee and hang out with me. Let's talk about it again in front of a couple people. So all of our friends are here. And we're still at caribou. Amy had a wonderful life growing up. And then things went sideways. It was about age 6 that you went from amazing to not so amazing.
Yeah. Now, actually, my parents separated about 3 weeks after I turned 2, but I was really young at the time, and so I don't remember that. And I always thought that it was normal to have parents who didn't live together. So this didn't really affect me or my happiness in any way. And when I was younger, I lived with my father, and I was very much the youngest, treasured child, little princess. I used to wear beautiful dresses every day, and took ballet classes and piano lessons, and life was just pretty good. I had my wonderful circle of friends who were all little pretty princesses too, and life was really good. Things changed when a few months into being in first grade, when I was 6, my older brother and sister decided that we were going to be moving in with my mother, who I love, who was in a different economic situation. My mother was so poor. When she finally went to the welfare office, she had about 12 cents to her name. She couldn't afford to buy us clothes, so we had to, even at the Salvation Army, so we had to depend on churches and charity for our clothing. And my father, and a lot of the wounds from this are obviously healed, and I have a wonderful relationship with my father. But my father was very angry when we moved in with my mother, so he wouldn't allow any of our possessions that we had to go with us. So I went from one day wearing my beautiful dresses that I loved to wearing things that weren't so nice. And within about the span of a week, I lost every single one of my friends, and no one would speak to me.
Now that was at age 6.
Yes.
Well, you still remember this very vividly, don't you?
I do. And I'm in some ways grateful for that opportunity to learn such a lesson at such a young age. It was very confusing at first because I hadn't changed, and I was still the same person that I was, a week ago. I just had to wear ugly clothes, which was hard enough as it was, but it was difficult to have those people who you thought were your friends either not speaking to you or pointing and laughing at what you were wearing, which is what they did.
And they simply cast you aside because you wore moon boots.
Oh, sorry, yes, I forgot. There were some amusing moments. Sorry, this is something I share with Rich, so I guess I have to share with you. There were some amusing times. I don't know if any of you are familiar with moon boots. They were really cool when I was young. I know Napoleon Dynamite wore them in his movie as well. And one of the charities had given us these moon boots, which was so exciting because they were in style, and I never got to wear anything that was like the fashion. But we soon discovered why they were donated. They had this clip that was on the inside that would clip together, I think, so you could hang it up on a wall or something. I'm not quite sure if you'd hang it up to. Well, these boots would spontaneously clip together as I was walking, and so I would be walking and I would just fall flat on my face at random times. We never quite knew when that was going to happen. And these are things now I look back and it's funny, and it wasn't really funny at the time, but it's funny the thought of just walking, yeah.